Well, thank you. I think it's a little ironic that as a blind man, I'm here to talk to you about having and building a better vision together. Um, and often people use the word see and panic with me. They're afraid of the word sight. See you later. I see what you mean, Randy. It's such a part of our speech. We live in a very visual world, and that's part of our connection, whether we're blind or whether we're fully sighted. And I do love the word see because all aspects of connection are so vitally important to me. Right? I I have a disability. I lost my sight. You see, at the age of 22, I was normally sighted, and suddenly, in a two-week span, I lost all of the vision in my right eye and half of the vision in my left eye. And that was really abrupt and sudden at the age of 22. And if it had stopped there, maybe that'd be okay, but it does continue. And let me be clear, this is not a pity story. This is a wonderful, marvelous life I've been able to build and experience. But I want you to see how low we slipped, because I want you to see how high I had to climb and how high I believe any of us can climb on the way to our peak potential. So after I had lost my vision and become legally blind, which I had to understand that term, it continued, and over the next 11 years, I had 6 episodes, which left me finally totally blind, or perhaps illegally blind, I don't know. I only know that 7% of the people who are blind actually are totally blind. The rest can see somewhat. And that was a big shock for me and a big change. And if it had stopped there, maybe that'd be okay. But I have a neurological disorder, maybe mitochondrial disease. They're still researching. And it attacks my nerves, and it attacked my peripheral nerves, so I lost feeling in my hands and my feet. And it attacked my cerebellum, my balance center. And I spent 1 year, 8 months, and 21 days in a wheelchair. And I tell you to that time detail because it's about how I felt about it. It was hard. And that wasn't quite the lowest, because while I was in the wheelchair, my first dog died, a beautiful golden retriever named Austin, on May 23rd, 2005, collapsed. You see, a cancerous tumor grew big enough to split his heart, and mine too. But, and I once learned that the word but means ignore everything I just said, here's what I really mean. And that's true in this point, as hard as that was, but I knew that there could be more and would be more, because the first step I'd sort of learned on the way through that adversity. The first step is learning to believe in yourself. When I first went blind, I thought everything fun and everything important was no longer possible. Unfortunately, I was very wrong. Right? Henry Ford said it very well. He said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right. I like to think of it as believe and achieve, but it's not just magic, right? Believing isn't enough. You're going to need to do some things. You're going to need to do some problem solving, some hard work and perseverance. And I like to think of challenges as a great way to start this, right? Challenges, goals. It's like positive adversity. You set goals for yourself and you get 3 fantastic benefits. 1, you're going to reach a lot more goals if you set them. It's a target for you to work towards. 2, you're going to develop this marvelous set of skills which you can use to handle reaching more goals. Sort of 2A, that same set of skills you get to use to reach other types of adversity. Right? It doesn't just work on the positive adversity of your goals, it works on the adversity of things that happen to you. And 3 is sort of my favorite. There's magic that happens to you on the way. When you choose to invest in these experiences, to try to solve problems, reach goals, and achieve things that matter to you, you sometimes have magic along the way. Being here for this presentation is a little magic that happened along the way. Challenges are going to come to us all. I speak with a lot of groups, and we'll test you as well, right? Everybody out there who's never had a challenge, please raise your right hand. I do this all the time. I've never seen a hand yet. Because I'm blind, yes, but also because we all are going to face challenges. And what I've learned very well is that we influence our life all the time with the choices we make. But things are still going to happen that our influence didn't have enough control over. But you always remain, and many people advocate this, you always remain in control of the choice of how you're going to respond to that challenge. And what I think is even more powerful is that the choice you make to respond to a challenge, that response is going to have a bigger impact in your life than any challenge ever could. My life isn't about the blindness. It's about all these marvelous choices I've made. You know, we call this presentation Reaching Our Peak Potential. And I think I want to show you that I mean that literally and figuratively. Right? Mountains are synonymous with challenge. And hopefully I just put up a picture of my beautiful boy Quinn with his nose thrust up into this blue sky background as we're approaching the craggy summit of Mount Monroe. Now, what's interesting to me is how and why did I go from being unable to walk or even stand, never mind that I couldn't see it all, to climbing mountains? One is that mountains are synonymous with challenge. It's that goal. Another reason is that, when you can't walk, you really learn to celebrate and appreciate the gift it is. And that's what let me think about setting some goals of climbing mountains. And a part of it is I like to put emphasis on this notion of ability awareness. I told you I have a disability. I can't see. In fact, there's quite a few things in this world that I can't do yet. But if they're important to me, I believe that can change. Right? And that changes by transforming your mindset, your personal vision of yourself, to not say, I can't do this, but maybe to go to, can I do this? Or maybe to go all the way to the best question of all, how can I do this? Because then you put your emphasis first off on what you can do. Ability awareness is always, what you can do is always more important than what you can't. But what you can't is just some problem-solving steps away from becoming what you can do. Right? I couldn't walk, couldn't stand. I learned how to do that in pieces. And how? Well, problem solving, there's a couple of ways to problem solve. First is to think, has it been solved before? In the wonderful age of Google and YouTube and TED Talks, go out and look and see how somebody's done it. It's real easy search. And, that problem, don't reinvent the wheel. I'll spare you the gory details of many wrestling matches I had in my first days of blindness with toothpaste and a toothbrush. Before one of my sighted peers say, I just squirt the toothpaste directly into my mouth. No mess, no hassle. Nice. Now, the second way is you can be a pioneer. And that also uses a community, just like that blind peer who saved me from those toothpaste wars. Right? Your peers can tell you what they've solved that you may want to do, but they can also help you problem solve. How might you go about that solution? And they can help you evaluate your solutions. When I wanted to climb mountains, there were a few people who said, that's ridiculous, you're blind. Stay on flat ground. In fact, my dog guides are trained their whole life to keep me on ground that's generally safer than that. But I wanted to do it, and that's the part of the vision, right? If you want to, you can challenge conventional wisdom. Just put some thought into it. There's this great quote by a college basketball coach, John Wooden. He said, we don't plan to fail, we fail to plan. I love that. I want to be a planner. I want to be a problem solver. People say, you're such a risk taker. The things that I've accomplished, I learned to hike these mountains. I learned to ski, much to my wife's dismay. I learned to run marathons. I even did a Tough Mudder recently. And athletically, that's very rewarding, but I didn't just run out there to do it and take my bumps and bruises. Right? And it's not just about athletics, to be clear. Professionally, I founded this marvelous charity that I'm so proud of. I am a member actively on 3 boards. I'm vice chair of 1. I'm vice president of my Lions Club. I'm active and capable. I didn't always believe that. Right? And honorifically, I think it's amusing that we have a blind guy from New Hampshire in the Hall of Fame, the Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. But maybe I'm more proud of my Sports Emmy Award nomination. I didn't win, so I'm the Susan Lucci of New Hampshire, I guess. But or maybe that I've had my first story published into a book, or maybe that we have some marvelous documentaries. But I think really what I'm most proud is that I get to deliver this message regularly. In the last 4 years to 34,000 students, these messages about teamwork and communication, believing in yourself, problem solving, and perseverance. Grit is something that we can all learn from. That's the pioneer solution. You really have to put a little grit into those. And those are all things I'm proud of and able to do. But how did you get there? How did you start? So let's talk about my first mountain. I take my dog guide, and we go on this mountain, Pac-Monadnock, with my wife, and we're navigating, and he's avoiding all these boulders with me. And we come to the first 3-foot step up that's not normal. And, he stops. That's intelligent disobedience is how a dog guide works. When they think that something's unsafe, they refuse to go for you. And it's your job to figure out why. You're a team. Right? Just like I said, the community helps you solve problems. I love community. It enhances your potential so much. Or it can, if used right. In fact, team, that very word, team, together, everyone achieves more. I love that notion. So I get there with my partner, Quinn, and I say, forward. And he says, no way, and backs up. Now, he's trained his whole life for how to guide a blind person safely. And I'm climbing my first mountain as a blind man. So what I do there is I ignore him very astutely. And I tap with my hiking stick and see that there's a 3-foot step. And I have 6'4", I have long legs. Check that I'm not going to hit my head. And I take this big step up to show him because I know that once he understands what we're going to do, that some of this will be okay. And as I do that, bam, I crack my head into a branch because Quinn was a little better at math than me. He says 3-foot step, 6-foot blind guy, 8.5-foot branch, no good. And I had just missed it. And what I learned from that, aside from the fact that maybe a helmet would work, was to trust the process. Right? When you're challenging convention, especially, I'm a fan, challenge convention, but trust the process, and when you're going to go against it, use more fail-safes. My fully sighted wife was with me. I could have said, maybe you can see why he's not going. And that would have been a little healthier on my head. Now, I will tell you the good news is I took this to heart, because as we began these winter climbs, because in New Hampshire we have these 48 4,000-foot mountains that exist, and I set a goal to climb all of them in a leisurely 10 years. And I set about it, and it was pretty hard, these twisty, rocky routes and drop-offs all over the place. And while I was underway, somebody said, hey, I have a great idea for you. Why don't you climb them all in one single winter? I'm like, that's a great idea. He says, 46 people ever had done it before we began this process. He said, that'll really highlight what you're saying. 2 dogs ever had done it before that. That'll highlight this ability awareness you speak of, but also winter makes it a little smoother, so maybe a little easier on your foot. So I did that. And on our early winter hikes, I did find that a lot of things were easier, a few new challenges, but my guide dog stopped me at one point and refused to go. And I felt with my foot, nothing there, my hands, nothing there. So hop up, he inches forward saying, okay, maybe, but there's still something you need to know about. I did that 3 or 4 times before I said, trust the process. I'm going against that, and I asked the sighted person with me, I said, Justin, any idea why he's not advancing? And he said, absolutely. There's a tree branch, but it's like 5 feet in front of you. Quinn had stopped me that much early. Why? That's not very helpful for me. So easy to get frustrated in this teamwork communication we've built. And the reason, as we learned with just a little more work, was that when I showed him on that first branch that I found it, yep, there's the branch, good boy, I tapped a branch and a foot of snow fell on his head, and he didn't like it very much. And it reminded me to always be open to what your teammates and what the folks around you are saying. When they're saying no, see what their reasons are, right? Explore it fully or bear with the consequences, right? And so we adapted and we developed, and that's great. And, and we made great progress on these mountains. You know, I can now tell you that 37 months after we began this 10-year goal, I finished all 48 for the second time because I did them once in that one single winter. And it was a marvelous experience. I took great lessons and had a lot of magical moments in it. But what I had to do was learn, one, to believe in myself, to problem solve, to work hard, persevere. There's a great moment. We call our video 4 More Feet because of the 4 feet next to me that helped me go do all those winter hikes. But also because nearing the top of Mount Washington, I was exhausted. It's hard work hiking. And I stopped, and you can't always see your visual goals if you're blind, and you can't always see your goals when they're non-visual, whether you're sighted or not. But what you know is you can always stop, but you're not going to reach goals when you stop. And sometimes there's the right time to reset and change. That's okay too. But I knew I had more. I was just trying to find that extra strength. And I said, how much further? Because I don't want to just count steps and push myself, although sometimes I do that. And the guy laughed and shouted out through the minus 27-degree temperature and 50-mile-an-hour winds. He shouted out, 4 more feet. I'm 6'4", that's a step for me. And I'd stopped 1 step away from my goal. And the only thing I know is if I'd stopped, I wouldn't have reached it. He wouldn't have let that happen, obviously. But just sometimes your goal's just 4 more feet, 1 step away. And think of that on whatever your goals are. How are you going to persevere through it? Now, that's all well and good. I talked about my conditioning. And I talked that in problem solving, one of the things I learned was that you're open-minded and sometimes you trust a little serendipity. as I was trying to get in better shape, I took longer walks around home with my dog guide. And as he picked up the pace, as we took routes he knew more and more, we began to be jogging and soon running. And soon I came up with this notion, hey, maybe I could run road races. I used to do that long ago. And Quinn and I ran 33 road races together where we were pioneers. They'd never had dog guide teams running road races. Some of them kind of famously. Like this shot, which is in 2012 on the BAA 5K. So it's a 5K road race that finishes with that flag display of the Boston Marathon behind us. And I know there's 3 paws on the ground and a joyous face and kind of a tired guy who's just tried to run through 10,000 people, not literally. But it's a lot of mental work. But I said after that, what a marvelous picture. And then one day later, that horrific example happened where the bombs exploded there. And I said to myself at that time, I have a new goal. I want to run the Boston Marathon because I love the community of response. Community can be challenging if you don't learn those communication and problem resolution tactics, right? And that's what led to things like that bombing. But community can be wonderful. The supporters, the EMTs that are running to the victims on the first explosion, a bomb explodes in front of them and they continue running because helping people is worth those risks. And the community that says we respond positively. That's what I want to be a part of. A friend of mine, Teddy Bruschi, describes the Boston Marathon 2 ways I love. He says, it's the Super Bowl of road races because you see the most inspirational runners, whether it's because of their abilities or what they're overcoming to do it, or whether it's his second quote, 26.2-mile home stadium of support all along the way. Because people supporting people is what makes community so wonderful, in my mind. So that was my goal. Unfortunately, right, Quinn's not with me today. Because shortly after that 37-month accomplishment, he began to be sick, and we learned that he had bone cancer, osteosarcoma on his skull, which is very rare. And I lost him on January 20th of this year. That's why I have this new lady. And I was devastated by that loss, no doubt about it. Right? And I took the time to take care of him, not to prep to run Boston, because framing failure. I didn't fail to reach my goal of running Boston the next year. I changed it. The marathon's going to be there. I'm going to run it this year. In fact, at home on my fridge is the confirmation that my qualifying time and my entrance is accepted, and I will be there. And I'll run it with a human. I won't be pushing my dog to run 26.2 miles on pavement. But you reframe failure by setting goals where you want them. It's okay to adjust. That's an important lesson to me. And I think it's an important lesson to everyone. So in that running, I learned a lot of things. And there's a community response I learned from a powerful woman, Maya Angelou, who we also lost this year. She has this quote. She says, people will forget what you said and what you did long before they'll ever forget how you made them feel. Right? And in that community, that's the important part. The people cheering on the marathon, your role in supporting those around you. Build your community right. It's not your bootstrap, as we learned earlier. It's who you surround yourself with. Find the right people who are going to support you, encourage you, problem solve with you, believe in you, and that you can do the same for them, because it's two-way. And if you do that, that's when you really get to see the community lets you reach more potential, lets you reach your peak potential, and build your common visions together. I love those words. Real quick, Teddy Bruschi did a project for the Wounded Warriors, where soldiers were coming back unwilling to believe in themselves after injuries, and where sometimes the community they returned to didn't believe in them. They focus on disability. People may have a disability. They are not disabled. That's an important distinction. And so he agreed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, the tallest standalone mountain in the world, to raise awareness for this. And he'd never climbed in his life when he called and asked a blind guy from New Hampshire to take him hiking. But he's a world-class athlete. He's got a lot of things in his side. But I asked him when we were teaching him to hike here in New Hampshire, I said, did people give you a hard time about asking a blind guy to teach you? He said, absolutely. But it comes down to what you told me. You want to solve a problem, a great way is to start by somebody who's already solved it. And not only do you hike, but you hike with some challenges. And that's really, what it's about. Well, he succeeded, credit to him, one of 2 celebrities, but 2 soldiers succeeded, including a woman whose shrapnel had taken her vision. Did it make a difference? Absolutely. It's the ripples of influence in your world. I built my friendship by wishing him happy birthday at a weird event. Right? It's just how it goes. You never know the power one of your words is going to have. It ultimately led to hiking with the guy and him climbing Kilimanjaro, which, by the way, I'll try to do next year in September. There's always ways to influence your community, and if you take that to advantage, you'll do well. My community, I want to thank, here's a group of them. up on a summit. We're on Cannon Mountain, my final mountain in my 48 in the winter. And we stopped on this summit with an overlook of the Lafayette Cliffs behind us that I'm told is spectacular. And that's not everybody who's ever hiked with me, but that's a group who hiked with me that day, and many of them on pieces. Celebrate those people, because I'm so thankful for them. I hope I give them the same kind of support, because that's really what lets you do things. And sort of my final thought in this is I talk about what I can't do is see, and I say if you want to do anything that's important enough to you, you find the way to do that. So let me show you where even a blind person can see, if you'll bear with me here. Right, on July 4th, 2010, I climbed Mount Washington as the first mountain in our quest. And as we're climbing the tallest mountain in the Northeast, we usually get pretty lousy weather. But we get up to Lake of the Clouds, up at 5,200 feet, where we're going to spend the night in the Appalachian Mountain Club hut up there with about 90 other people. And it's a clear night. And we all go out to watch this sunset, which is magical because of that clear night. And as you're sitting out there facing west and you look out, what you see are 7 mountain ranges that run north to south. You know, the closest ones in New Hampshire, the Lafayette Ridge that you see there, the Cannon and the Kinsmans, and more ridges in Vermont. All the way out across Vermont in New York, the distant Adirondack was the 7th range of mountains. And as we're looking out across that and the sun is setting and they're describing this to me, the angle of the sun turned those distant mountains purple, just like the song for Purple Mountain's Majesty. And as you came closer to those blue hills in Vermont, they resonated and glowed with that blue color. And the green, lush mountains closest to us of July 4th, Independence Day in New England. And then up above were the thin, wispy cirrus clouds that don't block the sun but capture it. And on the horizon, it was deep crimson red. And as you went higher, it was an autumn oak leaf orange. And then into pinks and fading behind us. And it was just majestic and powerful, and the emotions were palpable, even for the blind guy up there with them. Now here's my question to all of you, and I've asked this many times. Say yes if this is true. Did any of you out there picture that? Yeah, how can that be? You didn't see it. I didn't see it. It's because vision is 80% imagination. You want the science term for neurology. They say about 80% of our putting together images is done by our brain. Our eyes are just one way for it to get there. And there's many ways. Sight lets you see everything that's around you right now. That's great. I don't have that. Vision, done right, lets you see everything that's around you right now and every possible potential it could become. It's super sight. I don't have sight, but I can have vision. And we all can think of our vision and look at the world in a different perspective. What's important to us? Do we want to get there? And if so, how? And who can help us and who can we help reach theirs? Because that's where connections matter most. When community comes together and builds a positive vision together, we have lots of differences, but we have lots of things in common, far more than the differences. And when you put those to a vision, the peaks you reach will be well more valuable than the mountains I've reached. I know I can do anything. I really do. And if it's important enough to me, I'll get busy. I believe everyone out there can do anything that's important to them that they're willing to work hard and persevere through. But it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what they believe and what they do, not moments after I'm done talking, but tomorrow morning and every tomorrow after that. If they do, their vision will be as good as mine, and their life, I believe, will be as rich and rewarding as mine, and we'll all benefit from that. Thank you.